My father, well, he arrived in Ellis Island in 1901 with his cousin David from Italy, and they were detained there for processing for a while. Eventually, they both arrived in Northfield and settled here, and they'd started a business together doing carving. David died at 1909 at the age of 28. And my father he was also a sculptor, so these are the tools depicting his trade. There's the hammer, the square, the chisel, and this is the symbolism of the broken life, like a tree that was broken in midlife. And my father was devastated because they were in business together. Not only that, but the devastation of having lost his cousin, because they were very close.
Every stone monument tells a story of those it honors and of those who created it. Angelo Pietro Ambrosini was one of thousands of immigrants who came to work around Barre, Vermont. They were attracted by the largest sculpture-quality quarries in America. In the 1880s, when rail lines finally linked together the quarries, carving sheds, and markets across America, Barre became known as the Granite Capital of the world. The booming industry drew quarrymen and stonecutters from French Canada and across Europe, especially Scotland, Spain, Scandinavia, Poland, and Italy.
But granite industry was growing, developing, and offered work for anyone who could do anything with granite from Italy.
So they all came from Italy, and they all came to Barre to find jobs, and a lot of people came, they'd tell them, you go to Jones Brothers, that's the biggest place in Barre. Go there and you'll find a job. So, see, they all gravitated to this place.
The immigrants' identities would continue to be bound up with their home regions and with their cultural, artistic, and political values. They would retain their essential, distinctive character and transform their new homes, like Barre, as much as they themselves adapted and changed. To these immigrants' children and grandchildren would be left the task of carving out new identities, choosing what to cut away and what to keep of their Italian and American legacies. Barre's Italian immigrants came mainly from what is now the Swiss canton of Ticino and the northern Italian regions of Lombardia, Veneto, Piemonte, and northwestern Toscana. The stonecutters' homes and workplaces in Italy were generally located near quarries to avoid transporting the portion of the heavy stone that would eventually be cut away. The mountains around Carrara have been worked since Roman times and continue exporting marble today. Modern methods make the work safer and less wasteful, but quarry work has always been difficult and dangerous. Further north, granite and other types of stone were excavated and shaped. The artisan who cuts or carves the stone is known in Italian as a scalpellino. The scultore, the sculptor, conceives of the original form of a piece, often in a clay, then plaster model, Many Italians practiced both skills. Scalpellini were the backbone of the economy in many foothill communities, like Vigiù, a small town located near quarries of the finest stone in Lombardia. The poor soil could barely support the people, so they specialized in stone carving. The town's school trained generations of master sculptors, like Enrico Butti, and many of the stonecutters who worked on Milano's Duomo during its 500-year-long construction.
Noi qui siamo in Val Ceresio, una valle poco distante da Varese, ove da circa 1000 anni cavano la pietra. E la pietra era il pane di questa gente.
Speriamo che i sassi diventa panetti, che sti poretti si possa saziar, e che il caldo e il vegno in gennaro, che senza tabaro se possa marciare, e che il caldo e il vegno in gennaro, che senza...
Questa frazione l'hanno costruita i frati nel 1600. L'unico lavoro che c'era era il muratore. Chi faceva muratore riusciva a lavorare qua.
Il paese si è abbastanza, progredito, e nei secoli si sono, specializzati proprio nel fare capitelli, colonne, costruire. Dal 1500 in poi, fino ai giorni odierni, i vigiutesi, specialmente nel Settecento e nell'Ottocento, hanno avuto una parte preeminente sia nelle botteghe qui del Duomo e in Milano, sia come scultori e poi come ornatisti e scalpellini veri e propri. Io già da ragazzino ho frequentato per 6 anni la scuola di disegno di Vigiù. Lì ci sono moltissimi libri che parlano del Duomo. Nelle bocche degli artisti vigiutesi la loro aspirazione era lavorare per il Duomo perché era quasi un pane sicuro. Adagio adagio sono andati a calare, tiravano a campare a questo modo, un po' espatriando, cioè facevano la stagione in Svizzera, in Francia, Germania, in Russia andavano, Sudafrica, Sud America. Rientrando d'inverno producevano un po' di lavoro, facevano un po' come le rondini, no? Primavera andavano e quando era autunno tornavano.
Di avere un aiuto, poi con la plastilina si aggiunge materiale in modo da creare la forma. Lui ha lavorato fino al 1935 e poi, scarseggiando il lavoro, ha dovuto fare altri mestieri e aveva preso in considerazione l'emigrazione. Ha lavorato come emigrante in Svizzera per 7 anni, dopodiché è rientrato in Italia e ha cominciato l'attività di scultore in marmo per conto proprio.
C'era miseria e gli scalpellini erano poveri. Andava con mio papà, è andato a Chiasso in Svizzera a mettere un monumento. Li hanno ospitati per una settimana e gli hanno dato un pollo. Un pollo una volta, loro sembrava chissà cosa.
In the late 1800s, many quarries closed due to competition from other areas and from cheaper concrete. New taxes and economic policies favoring the upper and middle classes of a newly unified Italy made life even more difficult for artisans and peasants. Some protested or joined socialist, anarchist, and other radical movements. They were met with repression, often jail or exile. Long-term emigration became the most sensible option, though a difficult one, for many scalpellini.
E molti dal paese qui sono emigrati in...
Sì, quasi tutti.
E negli Stati Uniti?
Oh, anche.
The Scalpellini were among 14 million people who left Italy between 1870 and 1914, Of these, over 4 million came to the United States.
Questo io l'ho sentito dire da persone anziane che quando io ero un ragazzo mi raccontavano queste vicende e noi rimanevamo incantati dal sacrificio che dovevano affrontare per poter arrivare sul posto di lavoro e poi le condizioni di emigrante. È stata una cosa molto toccante.
From Genova, Italy, and ports in France, most American-bound scalpellini set off for New York. From there, they made their way across the country, many to quarry and stone finishing towns throughout New England. The largest contingent of Italian stonecutters came to central Vermont, principally to Barre. Stonecutters were attracted to Barre by the prospect of work and by the growing community of other paesani, former residents of their own local areas in Italy.
My grandparents came from northern Italy, from Feriolo and Osogna in Switzerland. They came as a kind of clan because there were 12, 13 couples involved. The granite industry was already into what you call nowadays headhunting. They wanted artisans. They wanted the quality of the Italian carvers who had long history of carving, learned from the Greeks and so on.
E di fatti guadagnavano dei bei soldi. Dai dati statistici prendevano 4-5 volte di più di ciò che prendevano in Italia.
The Italian carver's skill came from a centuries-old tradition of rigorous training. Young carvers learned by working alongside fathers, grandfathers, and uncles, as well as through formal schooling and apprenticeships which lasted many years. Though some tools and styles have been added, this basic education, grounded in classical traditions, still continues in Italian schools like Carrara's Scuola di Marmo and Vigiu's Design School.
Lui, classe 1912, ha iniziato qui nel paese di Vigiù, ha lavorato in una bottega, Franzi, dove c'erano con lui altri principianti i quali lavoravano per qualche anno gratuitamente per apprendere la tecnica della lavorazione.
Il papà cerca di insegnare, quando capita di fare un lavoro in marmo ovviamente sono anch'io che collaboro con lui e lui mi insegna, mi tramanda le vecchie tecniche che ancora il nonno usava. Sì.
Usiamo le stesse attrezzature che ha usato lui 70-80 anni fa.
Where I come from in Carrara, that's all you see. There is marble, and then there is art all over the place. My dad learned his profession through his father, because my grandfather was an architectural, used to make friezes too, so naturally my father learned the profession from him. I worked with my father next to each other, so naturally, things rubs off. After 5th grade, I went to the art school, which is La Scuola del Marmo. The first year, they asked me what I want to be, and I told them I want to be a sculptor. They said, oh no, it doesn't work that way. You're going to start to the bottom. You haven't got a profession yet. You got to start from zero. So it's 4 years of apprenticeship, being in the shop, and 6 before of art school makes 10 years, So naturally you come to Barre equipped.
They knew the work when they came here, even though he was only 21 years old. My father, from 1903 to 1906, he and 3 others, they cut these 6 statues that are on Union Station in Washington. They were 18 feet tall. It took my father and Bernasconi a whole year to cut the Ceres, the goddess of agriculture.
Many scalpellini continued their migratory lifestyle as they traveled from one job to another. The men stayed in boarding houses like the one run by the grandmother of Italian geography professor Carlo Brusa. His family background led Carlo to make a career of studying immigration.
Questo è proprio la storia della famiglia, perché io vengo da scalpellini. Quindi mio nonno è andato a Barre, Vermont, mia nonna è rimasta là, io ho sempre conosciuto gente che veniva e andava in America. Mio nonno, se voi leggete le lettere, girava New York e poi Barre, Vermont, ma se non c'era lavoro lo mandavano a Hurricane a cavare, a Rochester, a Harrisburg, eccetera, tutte le lettere.
Little Margaret Pitkin passed away, and when her parents were able to recover enough from that, they went to an Italian carver with a photograph of the girl, and the father's instruction to the carver was, now you make it exactly as the photograph, and if it isn't exact, I will not pay you 1 cent. So eventually, when it was completed, the mother burst out crying because the similarity was so striking. But the father, who had to pay the money, began to examine every little detail. The lapel watch, you could still tell the time, the lace on the skirt and the face, the hair, everything was fine. And he got down to her shoes, the right shoe, everything's fine. He gets over to the left and became very upset. The bottom button isn't buttoned. Look at that. You didn't button the bottom button. I won't pay you. And at this, the Italian carver shouts at him, look at the pick, look at the pick. They have to go to a big magnifying glass. And sure enough, the photograph shows that the little girl had not buttoned the bottom button. And the father had to pay, and the statue is there at this Green Mountain Cemetery to this day.
Whether this story is entirely true is unknown, but it does show the uncertainties Scalpellini faced in dealing with patrons and employers. Stonecutters made more money than most immigrant workers in America, and some became shed owners. Still, their economic vulnerability and their political leanings led many to join unions and take other collective action.
Uomini gli manca l'osteria, l'amicizia, le tradizioni, il vissuto, la lingua, e tutte queste cose soffrono. Ma Gianni è ritornato, chi non ce l'ha fatta più o non era coi figli se n'è ritornato.
Scalpellini were among the 50% of all Italian immigrants to America who eventually returned to Italy. Those carvers who stayed in America sought to re-establish the life they missed. Once they had saved enough money, married men sent for their families to join them, and many bachelors went back to Italy to find wives.
Ci sono le foto allora dei due fratelli Bruce emigrati, mio nonno e zio Pedrino, questo sempre a Rochester, sempre coi sigari, perché l'era un'aria da sciur. Mio nonno, dalla miseria, guardate qua, si è fatto la casa, ha sposato una ragazza di Varese, belli rosa, ecco.
My mother, she was beautiful, and asked her to marry him. 2 weeks later, they came to this country. So I never knew, personally, I never knew my grandmother or my uncles and aunts until I went for a visit much later, and most of my uncles and my grandmother were gone. But I did meet my cousins over there.
Maria è andata in America prima dello scoppio della guerra mondiale con la Germania, l'Austria. Ambrosini era andato là a fare lo scultore a Barre lì, e poi è venuto a casa, ha preso mia nonna e gli ha detto, la mamma della zia Maria, io devo sposare, ho intenzione di sposare sua figlia.
No, io ho sentito dalla zia che è andata, giovane, bella ragazza.
Perché era andata là in America, che non aveva ancora, aveva 17 anni, e il prete qui che comandava la parrocchia qua, l'ha come maledetta. Quei tempi là, prima voleva che si sposava qua, e al pulpito una domenica l'ha come Sì, come maledì, quella nave lì dovrà affondare.
And she never saw her family again until 1956 when she went back to Italy on a trip.
By 1900, a distinctly Italian community, concentrated mainly on the North End, was thriving in Barre.
Things had become fairly well set within the Italian community, which was very much the Italian colony, La Colonia Italiana, as they referred to it. And it had its own values, its own leaders, its own everything. I'm standing on the spot that my grandfather and a little boy of about 2.5 years of age, who later became my father, were standing in the May Day celebration of the socialists here in this labor hall back in 1903. This was to be the center of their whole life. Their main focus was staying together as a community, not just socialists, but the whole community.
That Socialist Hall was a community center. That's where they held dances. A great deal of social activity went on.
And it was not just here, because it mushroomed into all kinds of things. The dance and social activities parlayed into a group called the Italian Pleasure Club. And at least when in my day, it was an annual New Year's Day dance that was held in the Scampini block at the head of Granite Street. There was also stage productions up to and including full dress opera and plays with most of the actors and so on came from the local community. You had 2 or 3 bands of top quality musicians among the Italian community who were eager to teach their children. My father and his peers, other kids of the Italian community of that age, learned to play musical instruments in the classroom upstairs.
They had a consumer cooperative, they had a bakery, so that in every way, community activities focused on that center.
The cooperative attached to the Socialist Labor Hall was extensive enough to provide all of the Italian foods, imported olive oil and whatever.
Then, as now, food was a critical and savored connection with the Italians' birthplaces, their way of life, and their identity. The immigrants went to great lengths to import food from their native regions or recreate it in their new home.
Avevano un radicamento terribile, leggi nelle lettere, voglio quel salame lì.
Picking mushrooms, we used to go quite often. My mother and father would get up early, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and mushrooms so they could come back, and then he'd go to work. And we'd sit up half the day cleaning them.
Wine was a valued part of traditional meals and socializing, especially for scalpellini, who were typically given wine on the job to help their endurance.
Davano i soldi, pane e vino, così rimanevano belli forti, no? E lavoravano volentieri.
Però è anche bello, via, si beve in compagnia, perché il vino per essere buono va bevuto in compagnia. Allora c'è un detto del vino: il peggior vino fatto in casa è migliore di quello più buono venduto in commercio.
Making wine at home was not only preferred, it was the only way to get it legally in Prohibition-era Vermont.
The cooperative had made contact with Italian grape producers in California, and when every year the huge refrigerated railroad cars of grapes would come in, and we kids would go down there and try to steal some while they unloaded and parceled them out to individuals, as my grandfather was, who had all of the equipment for making his own wine. And that was a major event. And after that, then what was left was put into a copper boiler, and they made grappa.
Il vino mia nonna lo vendeva a nome di un prete, cioè la faceva arrivare, quando c'era il proibizionismo, dalla California. L'uva la preparavano lì a nome di un prete per dir la messa, poi è dovuta stare anche in galera qualche giorno perché si sono accorti che un prete non poteva bere così tanti litri, l'hanno denunciata e tutte ste robe.
The police were always raiding one and another, and some of them got sent to jail for a year, but they'd take away their wine and they'd say, we're going to throw it in the river. But do you think those policemen threw all that good, wonderful wine in the river? I doubt it.
The cooperative, the cooperativa. In the Depression years, when my father was out of work for 3 years, they carried him, and I think for the whole community.
There were a lot of grocers, Italian grocers, that were very good to give credit. I don't think that maybe we could have survived if we didn't have them. The Union Hall there, when they, at one time, they would, if somebody was sick, they would make a benefit dance and give the money to the family.
The immigrants also helped one another through an organization adopted from an Italian model, the Workers' Mutual Aid Society.
Ecco, la società mutuo soccorso è nata nel 1862 per volere dei cittadini. Il vantaggio primo era appunto di mutualità, la stessa mutualità che ho spiegato poc'anzi.
La società del mutuo soccorso, Mutual Aid Society, was started at that time, 1906. There was no Social Security, no medical plans, no aid of any nature. So the club was formed. So a family in distress, if you were sick, a small amount of money was given, or if you were laid off and whatnot.
It was a club where the Italians could come and buy life insurance, so they'd have something to get buried. And then it just grew. We basically have a dinner here every Friday night.
Our purpose is to still continue a certain amount of Italian heritage because it was the start of the club.
Barre emerged as one of the centers of thought activity on part of different various radical groups, socialists, anarchists, and this was a way of life which was taken very seriously.
Angelo Ambrosini expressed his dedication to socialist ideals not only through his political activities and union organizing, but also in the names he chose for his children.
My father loved this country, and he admired Abraham Lincoln. So that's why he gave Angelo the middle name of Lincoln. Libera, for liberty. And Aveniri, that was the future. And my name, Aurora, for the dawn. So they were quite idealistic.
The park was kind of blackballed by the manufacturers who were opposed to any organized labor movement. He was telling my mother that a man fregar, they screwed me. But fregar also means like to rub. So I remember rubbing his legs like this, and then he saw that I had overheard, so he picked me up. It had to be one of the times when he had been denied work because of his union involvement.
While socialists and anarchists held cooperative ideals and both wanted to replace the current political and economic system, they spent at least as much time attacking each other as they did battling capitalism.
Socialists and anarchists couldn't stand each other, and they were at each other's throat all the time. They have long-running dogfights in the papers.
Fights often broke out at the labor hall, which some called the bucket of blood. In the most infamous confrontation, the noted sculptor Elia Corti was accidentally shot and killed in a scuffle at the labor hall.
what one is impressed with is the passion which people invested in this movement, the courage, the commitment of these people.
Despite the distance, Barre immigrants affirmed their roots by keeping in touch with family and friends in Italy and helping to support political groups and local communities they had to leave behind.
My mother helped me to write Italian to my grandmother. I used to write to her often.
E si ricordano, io scrivo poco, ma loro scrivono sempre. L'Aurora Pöla, ma scrive sempre. Sempre. In affezionare.
Poi la zia mandava sempre i pacchi, la zia Maria, sempre, ogni 2 o 3 mesi mandava il pacco, i funghi, lei i funghi, sempre.
Gli arrivavano dei soldi, magari nascosti nella busta o qualcosa, ma che sempre aiutare la mia nonna.
Trips back and forth also helped renew the immigrants' sense of connection to people and places in Italy.
Mio nonno è diventato cittadino americano nel 1914, dopo 9 anni. I viaggi andata e ritorno di tutti erano molto frequenti, cioè perché alla fine dell'anno o di ogni 2 anni venivano a casa. Mio nonno, con una storia di famiglia complicatissima, è venuto a casa nel 1920 con un po' di soldi, ma ha montato le 2 baracche di legno. Ha preso il terreno per fare una villetta, ma non ce l'ha fatta, perché è morto prima. Questa è la nostra storia, la storia di tutti. Han fatto e poi ci hanno lasciato le penne, ma comunque hanno combattuto.
Barre's Italian colony and the granite industry were thriving by 1900. The city had built a magnificent city hall and opera house complex, and Vermont granite monuments graced cities all across America. But a scourge, silicosis, devastated the community and threatened to shut down the stoneworking industry.
In Italy, the stone sheds were open structures, no walls. So you were out in the air and the dust wasn't concentrated inside of a building. When the workers came here, they were working inside much of the time.
Pneumatic tools generated so much dust that workers sometimes couldn't even see across the carving shed.
And they were dying before their 50th birthday.
I always had trouble talking about my dad because he died before I was 7. I was still 6 years old. He died because of the silicosis he contracted from the dust in the industry. He was in this, what they call the sanatorium in Barre. I know I wasn't allowed to go near him. One time I went over to a neighbor's house, which was in probably a distance of 1.5 miles, direct line to the sanatorium. He had binoculars, and he was going to be waiting for me at a specified time. I had a handkerchief, a white handkerchief that I was supposed to wave, and he was supposed to be watching. And I assumed he saw me wave, but it was kind of an emotional time.
Silicosis sometimes led to tuberculosis, which others could catch.
One thing I always remember, I didn't even dare to hug and kiss my father. We were so afraid of catching that disease. So I'd go up and say, "Hi, Pa," and stand by the bedside. We could touch him, but I wouldn't kiss him. Yeah. My mother always made some good old Italian soup like that, minestra, because my father didn't like the food up there that they gave him. So we would go up after school. We'd walk up there to leave for him to eat for a meal. And it was quite a long walk, but we did it anyway. But he was only up there. He went in October, and he died the next April. And when he knew he was going, he wanted to be home. So he came home and died at home.
The incident of death caused by the silicosis was extremely high. And if you add all of the other ways that they chose to end their life rather than drown in their own blood, you have an extremely high percentage of stonecutters who took their own life because they didn't want to face that kind of death.
Lui si ricorda benissimo parecchie volte, sentendo le campane delle chiese dei paesi vicino, sentiva dire, ecco, è uno che ha preso il male dell'America, perché contraevano questa silicosi e non c'era cura. Dopo 15 anni arrivavano a casa e dopo un po' morivano.
It was a tough time, but this was common in those times when anyone reaching the age of 40 or 50, having worked in the granite industry, was a ripe old age. So there were a lot of widows in Barre at that time.
I lost my father, and my father was 49 years old when he died. He was sick a whole year with the silicosis. And these widows at that time did not have means of support. So they really had to go, like, make a dining area where they could have boarders, or some of them rented rooms, and so they made do some way, somehow.
Some of them probably didn't have any insurance. They had to make a living. So that was easy for them to make wine and sell it, which was against the law. So they did get raided.
It was the height of Depression, and there weren't very many jobs. So we went out, though, and we'd find odds and ends to do, like I'd work in a store, or work in Fishman's, work in a grocery store. My brother worked. They'd go up to the Barre Country Club and caddy and make a little money up there. As long as we got a quarter to put in the gas meter, that was all that mattered.
The Stonecutters Union made dust reduction a central demand and struck over the issue in 1903 and in 1915. But employer practices reduced the union's ranks and labor's ability to press for safer workplaces.
The employers looked upon the dust collection equipment as an additional cost. And you always look at competition, you know, and if your neighbor don't have to do it, why should you have to do it from a business point of view? So the union recognized in the 30s that there had to be something, some kind of incentive for the employers to all do it. In 1938, the union was able to convince management that everyone should have these suction devices put in. The union negotiated a contract that year, and I believe that was the first year that we had 100% union contracts in the industry. They negotiated a contract that provided for $1 a day less wages, providing the employers would all put in the dust collecting devices, suction devices we called them.
At the same time, the state of Vermont passed legislation requiring the use of suction equipment in the stone sheds.
So our union had no new cases of silicosis of people that started after 1938.
There were like huge vacuum hoses that they placed near their work to suck this dangerous dust away from the workplace, and it made it safe for people to work in the granite plant.
I started in the granite industry in 1953. My father was very much against it. Most granite cutters didn't want their sons exposed to the silica dust that they had been exposed to.
Before he passed away, he directed my mother to never to let my brother or myself get involved in in the granite industry because of this hazard. But by the time I decided to get into it, it was already made safer by the advent of the suction devices. So I went against his wishes and tried to continue his sculpting. And I worked for a total of 52 years in this granite dust environment, but because of the suctions, I was able to maintain a fairly healthy condition. I had always anticipated perhaps being a designer or a draftsman in the granite industry. I decided to go to the art school in Barre. And then at that point, I started to think perhaps maybe I should get into carving. And I got a job as an apprentice at the Camoli Granite Company in Barre. And I happened to work next to some newly imported carvers from Italy, including Bardelli and Orazio Marcelli.
It was a long time, the immigration was closed, and me, I was the first. I have the privilege to come here. We have a special visa from the government because the manufacturing Barre, they need some people.
As the immigrant generation of Scalpellini sickened and died of silicosis, and the second generation avoided the craft, skilled carvers became hard to find in Barre. Congress came to the industry's aid by passing a special waiver, allowing a few carvers to come to Vermont from Italy, starting in 1948. These artisans and sculptors mentored American-born carvers, who, in turn, taught the next generation.
Marcelli was a very skilled sculptor, Bardelli also. I happened to work next to Marcelli, so he used to call me over to smooth up the work he had done. And then he saw that I had interest in learning, so as time went on, he would leave more of the work for me to do. And so slowly I got into doing it myself. And then at one point he said, now you can do it by yourself.
As a young boy coming in here and working, I always wanted to be like Angelo. He was, to me, the best sculptor I had ever seen. He was so kind and so patient with me, teaching me. For 30 years we worked together. I was born here at the house next door, which was owned by my grandmother from Italy. And my dad had a studio here. I wanted to be a sculptor. I knew I wasn't, but I knew that if I studied, if I worked hard, that I someday could come back home and be part of Celestial Memorial and maybe someday own it. With a lot of discussions with my parents and with other Italians in Barre, we all decided that going back to Italy to the Academy of Fine Arts would be a great thing for me to do. So back in Italy, the 3 years that I was there, I would walk around and admire the statues, all the corner carvings of buildings. Anywhere you went, there was a reminder of why you were in Italy. And of course, at 19, I was impressed by all the artwork. I think I was storing this in my mind like a library, so to someday bring it home and put it to good use.
Carvers have continued to move between the two countries. Carrara sculptors Lucio Carusi, his son Roberto, and daughter Cristina spent many years in Barre and occasionally still travel there to work on sculpture projects.
Mi sono trasferito negli Stati Uniti per una richiesta che una compagnia del Vermont mi aveva fatto. Avevo moglie e 2 bambini, però eravamo tanto giovani, abbiamo voluto anche un po' il senso dell'avventura, di andare a provare com'era la vita del Vermont. Mi sono trovato bene, avevo l'intenzione poi di ritornare indietro e quindi abbiamo passato i nostri anni contenti.
My dad went to Scuola del Marmo in Carrara,
and a company from Barre, Vermont asked him to go over and work for them, and he accepted. He thought it would be a very nice experience, see the differences. And so we went.
Lucio and fellow Carrara stone carvers Alcide Fantoni and Alberto Cecchinelli always thought of themselves as Italian during their years in America. Even after years in Barre, Alcide always made his carving hat from Italian newspapers. For their children, the choice of cultural identity was not so clear.
Sono arrivata nel Vermont che avevo 2 anni e sono cresciuta là. E l'esperienza che ho fatto nel Vermont mi ha segnata, e del Vermont ho apprezzato molto la natura e ho sempre pensato che sia il posto più bello sulla terra dove un bambino possa crescere. E questo mi ha influenzato anche nel mio lavoro, perché si vede nella mia scultura questa natura. My father, he said that when they first got in Vermont, they saw the beautiful, the nature, and they said, oh, why can't we sell the house in Italy and stay here forever? It's beautiful, they said. But apart that, what an Italian, what's the thing that brings an Italian back is the culture. Ovviamente la mia prima lingua è l'inglese. My first language is English. So, come si dice, l'accento si sente, è rimasto. E quindi posso dire di essere meticcia, mezza italiana e mezza americana.
My parents kind of still remained in their Italian ways, and I can remember a few episodes where they made me dress like the Italians because that's the way they were, and it wasn't easy fitting in with the other girls and the people at school, and I was always the little Italian girl, and so you kind of had to adapt. And after a while, I kind of did feel totally a Vermonter. I felt 100% Vermonter. And then we moved back. After that, I was already 18. And I was the American here in Italy. I wasn't Italian anymore.
I already knew Italy. But it was, when I came up to last, it was a little bit traumatic for me because beginning the schools in the States and coming in Italy without knowing Italian, that was very difficult for a girl that was 11, 12 years old.
I was Italian for me because my mother had brought us up that way, but I wasn't for everybody else. And so instead of having 2 nationalities, as it would seem, you have none.
Only being in Italy really did give me an education that I never would have gotten here. I needed to go back to my ancestors' homes, study the culture, speak the language. My heart was in Italy. I wanted to stay, but also I had a family here. As much as I loved my surroundings in Italy, my family meant everything to me. And of course, working here in the studio was something that I always wanted to do. I wanted to show my dad how great I was going to be someday. And coming home, it cut both ways. For the longest time, I didn't know if I should be in Italy or I should be here. And that was a sad time for me.
When my dad died, so naturally I picked, the Pietà and sent it to Italy. In Italy, they sent a lot of marble out all over the world, and here I am, I'll send some to Italy, just to make, the the whole circle. See?
Even in Italy, the centuries-old culture of family stone-cutting workshops and formal education is threatened, as many art schools reject traditional training and techniques.
E ho notato, frequentando l'accademia, che tutta questa tradizione si è persa. Quindi è tutto un modo completamente differente di fare scultura. Io ho avuto la fortuna di imparare il mestiere ancora in bottega. Proprio la preoccupazione che un giorno questo mestiere, come altri, vadano perdendosi definitivamente.
At the start of the 21st century, the number of skilled stone carvers in Barre, as in Italy, was again on the decline. The industry in both countries faced increasing competition from cheaper international producers. In Vermont, there were few training opportunities, so Giuliano Cecchinelli joined others in the community to start a stone art school in a restored granite shed.
First you make, get the volume. You don't want to do hair, you can make him
But not
bald.
including the hair or the hair on top of that.
When I came here, the old sculptors or artisti, they were dead practically, so there wasn't nobody to carry through and to teach you. See? In truth, there were a few, the ones that they were here already, coming from Italy in 1948. Come March 2005, it'll be 4 years that I'm cutting stone, I'm cutting granite. See, that's what I owe them. Because, I came and I got the cream. See? So naturally, that's what I'm trying to pay back to them. That's what I'm trying to do to school. Whatever they knew, I learned, and now I'm trying to give it back to them.
The Italian community in Barre has dispersed across Vermont, North America, and beyond. The remaining stone carvers come from many nationalities. In Italy, too, artists and students from all over the world now work and study. The seeds of the sculptural art that were sprouted and nurtured by the Scalpellini of Italy continue to take hold internationally. What is common to all carvers is passion for their craft and respect for the stone.
Questo è un lavoro che bisogna fare se si sente, se si ha veramente la passione, non si può fare per forza, perché è faticoso, ci sono tanti rischi e siamo fuori del tempo. No? Ci vogliono anni per imparare, le paghe non sono eccezionali, però se uno ha passione di farlo, ha piacere a farlo, quando lo fa lo sta bene.
Granite is all over the surface of the earth. It's the oldest thing that there is, actually. And here I am, I'm trying to mold stone, into something. I mean, to me, that's the greatest thing that anybody can do.
Ogni lavoro è un mondo a sé, ogni materiale che si lavora ha una sua anima, ha una sua anche memoria. Ogni volta che io affronto una scultura e i miei alunni affrontano dei lavori, sia per me che per loro è sempre un'esperienza nuova e ogni lavoro va affrontato con una grande umiltà. Io dico sempre a loro, ragazzi, ricordatevi che il marmo è come una persona.
As Michelangelo said, the form is within the marble. It guides you because you try to do something, it doesn't work. But if you go along with the flow and, with the grain of the marble or whatever, somehow it works out. It's very mysterious, but it's absolutely true.
Non è un oggetto, un prodotto, è più di un prodotto, qualche cosa che viene dallo spirito. Un uomo senza creatività è un uomo piatto, un uomo senza dinamismo, senza niente, non vive una vita.
He never disappeared, this trait. It's the trait mostly antique. You go back in the Roman time, Egyptian time. they are scalpellini. See what I mean? They are a trade very, very old. Never disappear.
Vermont PBS, partnering with local filmmakers to bring you stories made here. For more, visit vermontpbs.org.